大家晚上好。
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good night, good afternoon. So today, welcome to the 9th South-South Forum on Sustainability. And this is the 32nd session. And we are very honored to invite 3 very distinguished speakers. The first is the Xiaode professor. He's our main speaker. And we have 2 discussants. We have Jorge Ishizawa from Peru and Chantana, Professor Chantana from Thailand. I am Zhixiong. I'm from Guoren Rural Reconstruction Social Enterprises Alliance. And we will provide, as usual, Chinese, English, Spanish, and also Japanese interpretation. You could choose the language you want to listen to in Zoom. Today, the topic is how China's farming wisdom can inspire the world's agricultural development. This is one of the last 4 sessions of this South-South Forum. And I'm going to give a brief introduction of our main speaker, Professor Zhang Xiaode. Professor Zhang Xiaode is a professor in the Department of Social and Ecological Civilization of the Central Party School, National School of Administration, and a doctoral supervisor. He was formerly the Deputy Director of the Economics Department of the National School of Administration. He is also a member of the National Expert Committee on Climate Change, Vice President of the Association for the Promotion of Civilizational Heritage of the China Yanhuang Culture Research Association, Director of the China Rural Civilization Research Center, and serves as an economic advisor to several local governments. He is mainly engaged in the research of ecological civilization, ecological economy, and rural civilization development. He is one of the earliest scholars in China to study the ecological civilization and rural civilization. He has followed the study of ecological civilization and economy research for more than 20 years. He has published 5 monographs and over 200 articles. He has including the reincarnation of civilization, a new era of ecological civilization, and the revival of Chinese civilization. In order to promote the study of the Chinese rural civilization, Professor Zhang started the annual China Rural Civilization Development Forum in 2014. Also, he established the China Organic Conference in 2015. In order to explore Chinese rural education, he led a group of professors and PhD volunteers to complete a 3-year educational experiment for the children left behind in the rural area. And of course, he has participated widely in lots of different activities related to the rural reconstruction. Today, I would like to introduce a little bit on his topic. And we know that China has more than 10,000 years of farming civilization and has passed on from generation to generation lots of culture and also heritage on the aspect. China has studied the ecological civilization strategy and promotes the rural reconstruction. So why we wanted to study such a role that is so different from the Western culture, Western civilization? Well, what is the characteristics of the China's long history of the farming civilization, and how can this road as an inclusive modernization road in the backdrop of the crisis of the Western industrial civilization, how can we give some insights to how do we deal with all those problems and crises? I believe today's speaker will give us a comprehensive answer and some insights. So now let's welcome Professor Zhang Xiaode. Hello, everyone. I'm very honored and pleased to be able to deliver a lecture at such a time on the Chinese intelligent farming how the Chinese farming can inspire the world's agricultural development. Centered on such a grand narrative, a grand topic. And this is also a question of where's our front line, but it's also at the same time a very urgent issue that needs theoretical practice. And not only China, but also the whole world has to engage in the discussion and also exploration. In such a limited time, I will try to give some insights, but aiming at inspire more discussion and talks. There are four main aspects. First is on the crisis and reflection of modern agriculture. Second, I come up with a new idea, which is a reinterpretation of China's contribution, because in the recent times, there are in this discourse of the Western Eurocentrism, the so-called Chinese core contribution is different from what I am going to come up with. I think China's contribution to the world is not only limited to these four main contributions, but there are more important and neglected contributions from China to the world. So China's contribution in the research among all the contributions from China to the world, there is the intelligent farming of China. So this is a farming wisdom of 5,000 years. How can we really understand it? I think it will take decades of time. But tonight, I'm going to give a main idea on Chinese intelligent wisdom, which has 5 main characteristics. And at last, I will on the Chinese intelligent farming, how can it contribute to the future agricultural revolution? So now let's go back to the first point. It's on the reflection of modern agriculture. So I personally think the modern agriculture, after hundreds of years of development, it has left to the mankind more harm than good, more crisis than interest. There are 4 main crises. First is the food crisis. We know that the so-called modern agriculture actually is a dilemma from the point of view of technology. Yes, it does. In recent times, is it indeed a revolution? Yes. Well, we do. The technology and the power of the market, the force of the market, the force of the capital. Well, if they give us a number, it can feed 12 to 14 billion of people. But it's a dilemma, like I said, because we are facing another problem. There are still 2 billion people that are still malnourished. 800 million people don't have enough food. Why is there such a situation? We know that in the developed countries where the agriculture has reached modernization, we are wasting food. There are every year the world wastes about 1.4 billion tons of food, which can feed 4.9 billion people. The United States wastes nearly 40 million tons per year, accounting for 30 to 40%. China, as a great power, And we might think we already catch up in the road of the modernization. We also face the same problem as in United States. Every year we waste 100 billion pounds, 100 billion kilos a year. That is enough to meet 350 million people's need. There are still so many people that doesn't have food, and this is a crisis. This is a shame. So that is the first crisis, the food crisis. The second is the environmental crisis. In China has come up with the contamination, has come up with the starting to attack the problem of the pollution, and we already have waged 3 wars against the soil, against the environment. After 3 years of the campaign, the sky in China starts to turn blue, and the water starts to get cleaner. But has the soil problem been solved? No, not yet. No matter whether in the developed countries or in developing countries, the industrialization has lots of contamination in the air, in the water, and in the soil. The most difficult problem, and the problem that has not yet been resolved, is the soil contamination. It is related to the so-called modern agriculture. So, resolved around this problem, in 2018, the FAO held the first global seminar on soil contamination at its headquarters in Rome. I think it's a bit too late, because we already have a conference on climate, but we haven't paid enough attention to the soil, because the soil, the most difficult problem to resolve is the soil problem, is the soil contamination. The chemical industry in Europe emitted 390 million tons of chemical pollutants, of which 170 million tons were considered to be a risk to the environment. And also, all of the husbandry produced large amount of the residue of the bad stuff into the soil, and we haven't been able to resolve it. The manures, global manure production. The global manure is considered as a fertilizer to the soil, but now all the result from the husbandry and the growth of husbandry, which make the manure become one of the main source of the soil pollution, soil contamination. There are lots of data related to this topic, and I'm not going to go into details. So because I think lots of people hasn't seen the danger from the modern agriculture. And this is what should catch our attention. All of the food crisis and the environmental crisis has been paid attention to, but there is also another crisis that have been neglected. The number 3 and number 4 crisis brought very negative impact, but it hasn't yet received enough attention. The third crisis is the cultural crisis, because we know that the biodiversity has been damaged. The scientists have said that at this speed, China, the whole country will have the 7th extinction of all the lives. But I think there is another a bigger damage than that is the cultural crisis, because the cultural diversity has been damaged to great extent. The ancient agrarian civilization of mankind, compared to the industrial civilization, it was considered as backward. But the agrarian civilization has created a diverse civilizations and diverse cultures, which it has reached a height that the industrial civilization will never reach. The process of industrial civilization going global is not only the process of the biodiversity being destroyed, but also the process of causing serious damage to the cultural diversity prevalent in ancient times, in ancient agrarian culture. I always said that today what we lost is not only the rural villages. Rural villages is rural areas has been destroyed by the industrial civilization, and this is an irreversible process, because what you lost is gone. Without culture, we won't have any biodiverse art or biodiverse culture. I think we are living in a desert, of culture. So I think we should in China, people are still like looking up to the modern agriculture as in America or in Europe. And this kind of modern agriculture tells us the less population in the rural area, the better. What's the problem behind it? The lies behind is the biodiversity being destroyed, and the rural area will be destroyed once for all. As we can see, the Western colonization is a process of sacking of cultural diversity. In the fourth year of Columbus' arrival in the Americas, Haitian indigenous people died of starvation, exhaustion, disease, suicide, and massacre, accounting for 1/3 of the island's population. 300 years between 1520 and 1820, the Spanish brought back 2.5 million kilograms of gold and 1 million kilos of silver from the Americas, worth more than $6 billion at the cost of 10 million lives. And with the loss of the culture, with the gold being looted, being plundered, and the indigenous people were killed, the ancient African civilization, the birthplace of human civilization, suffered another brutal sacking in the slave trade. During the 15th to the 18th century, 150 million African slaves were shipped to the Americas. Behind all of those numbers are the cost of culture, the cost of civilization. Now, the crisis of life, I think this is the greatest danger of industrial agriculture, because today the logic of industrialization of agriculture is about the pursuit of high efficiency. In order to get that, they have to expand in scale. And in order to get that, you need a monoculture so that you can use the machines. So this kind of monoculture results in the diversity symbiosis imbalance, because if you keep growing the same crop in the same land, it will result in the loss of soil. So behind this is because and because of that, the land fertility will decline. And then in order to solve that problem, they will use the chemical fertilizers and pesticides, and thus decline and destruction of the diverse organisms, which will result in the crisis of humans. So, but what food we are eating now is a poisonous food.
So now we can see that because of the escalation in agriculture, we have another serious consequence, that is a crisis of human life. Our soil is sick. A Chinese scientist says research show that there are more than 90 chemical elements in the world, and about 30 of them are essential for life. And there is this great drain of these important elements. For example, iron, calcium, zinc, sulfur, phosphorus, manganese, and copper. Because of the draining of these important elements, it's harder to synthesize the enzyme that we needed for digestion. We have 10 to 20,000 of these kind of enzymes for digestion. We can see that the consequence is that what they eat cannot provide enough nutrition for our cells, which means that because our soil is sick, every person's cell is sick, which means that we can no longer have a healthy body. We just humans, like apparently we're healthy human, but when it's boiled down to the core, there are more problems. Many technicians or scientists today are too professionalized, and it leads to problem of human crisis. Some important issues are ignored. Scientists or economists many of them know nothing about this current crisis. So this crisis of life, as can be seen from the abundant occurrence of cancer, can be traced back to the problem of soil, which is the mother of human beings. When the mother is sick, the children she brings to the world are also sick. The biggest problem is with our soil, with our land. And I believe this awareness should be raised among all human beings. I believe in the UN they should not emphasize too much on carbon emission of things like that. They should pay more attention to our problem in the soil. It is a very serious problem. In my opinion, the 500 years of Western industry civilization is the culture of life, and it lasts until today. Today, the agriculture has something to do with using weapons, the extermination of one race with weapons of another. And I believe the current agriculture is actually the same practice in the agrarian area. Now we believe that maybe in their opinion, they say that corn is our crop and we don't need the rest, so we kill them. So they use agrochemicals. We have to remember that the earth belongs to human beings and it does not belong to you as all Europe or any single country. It belongs to whole humanity. Nature will not allow these kind of practices. My interpretation of the current pandemic is that it happens because human beings have gone too far in our development model, and it should be serve as a warning for us. And stop practicing the current practices. In the ancient Chinese wisdom, this is a punishment from nature. Due to time constraints, I will not go to greater details. All these slides are about the root of our diseases, that is the sickness of our soil. We don't have enough minerals in our food. And it leads to the problem with our enzymes, the problem in synthesizing enzymes, and which leads to indigestion and many sicknesses or illnesses in human beings, like many chronic diseases or major diseases such as hypertension, diabetes. A scholar researched into this because his or her own mother has had cancer, and he or she wanted to save the mom and try to use his own way to save the life of his mom. And the mom was later became healthy because he feed organic food to his mom. But currently, this practice of the theory cannot be the mainstream. Here is also other data in this regard. The chemical agriculture is the root to our current agricultural problems. I've already spent 20 minutes and I still have 2 or 3 major issues to cover. I think we must review and reflect what's the problems with industrialized agriculture. First, we use the industrial mindset to deal with agriculture. Agro-organizations become enterprises. The best organization, the most efficient organization for agriculture is actually the household. The current practice, on the other hand, leads to the deconstruction of the rural society, the rural household, and also gone with them are the rural society that carries the culture. So we not only have one culture that is vast and industrialized culture. Second is escalation of agriculture. Capital benefits from it, but they've had heavy price to pay, like that of lives and that of the environment. The current agriculture is marketized, and it works everything for profit alone. This is the biggest mistake. Agriculture should be a common good, different from industrial products. It serves livelihood instead of make money. And the result is that this high efficiency agriculture caused a lot of problems. As I've mentioned, many people are undernourished by the surplus production. The problem is that agricultural products that are public good became products of capitalism. I believe this is a crime and economies should be blamed. And last of them is the technology upon agriculture. Agriculture becomes humanless agriculture and excludes farmers. They use machines instead. And this leads us to rediscover the current mode of agriculture. First, I believe that the current industrialized way should be approached differently. It has its strength in that it achieved great accomplishments in the sector of industry. But as for agriculture, the same technology caused a much bigger crisis in this primary sector. When I teach my students, I tell them that China became the biggest industrial producer in the world. As I can see, my Apple laptop is of great quality and it's very convenient. There are also similar advancements in agriculture, yet the quality of agriculture products are on the decrease. And where there is industrialized agriculture, there is less forms of life in this area. Life is facing a crisis. So what causes this paradox? That is because we rely too heavily on chemistry. It is a lifeless industry. On the other hand, agriculture is a life industry. So the problem is because we're using lifeless techniques and approaches to solve life problems. If we do not have a change of mindset, we will go deeper and go further in our mistakes. Agriculture is different from industry. The second is that whether it's in terms of environment, culture, life, or society, we're on a wrong path. And this is causing crisis to human beings. Of course, we see that there are crises with the secondary industry as well, but our crisis in agriculture is way more grave. As I've already mentioned, it is a crisis of human life. Third, we should try to resolve this crisis of industrial civilization, and it requires walking away from this model. All human beings on our earth face the biggest crisis, that is the industrial society crisis, needs to be solved in the primary sector in agriculture. It's not just about feeding people. We need a whole new global agriculture revolution. We should reach a consensus. We should no longer stick to industrialized agriculture. Instead, we should use ecological agriculture. It's not just simply an economic problem. We need to save human beings first. We've had 200 years of industrialization, and it has accomplished its historical missions, and we need agriculture to solve all the problems caused by industrialization. We should devote more energy, more efforts to the revolution of agriculture. This is a common task, a common cause of human beings. We need to wake up. Theoretical innovation is not just has something to do with analysis or research. We need to work to save human beings as a whole. Fourthly, faced with a global crisis, we see that the crisis of industrialization are very deeply rooted, and it's a powerful crisis. A single human being cannot fight against this. I believe China is the force we will be relying on to solve this crisis. I do not say this because I am Chinese, but because some different reason. We need to stand straight against the industrial civilization, but handling it requires a very powerful force, something that is already there in the current China. China is a big country, a big civilization. It's able to accomplish big things. We can see that without China, no country in the world can stand against the US. In my opinion, the frictions between these two countries is not something economical. It is a conflict between two different forms of civilizations. If China wins in this regard, human beings will go on a new, different path of ecological civilization. So the current crisis has something to do with the orientation of civilization. We should no longer use the mindset of the industrial civilization to solve our problems. This should be a consensus among the academia. So that's all for the first part. Second, as we see, China has to contribute to the humanity, but they need to reinterpret what kind of contribution is this. In my opinion, the Western civilization model is a material civilization, that is material civilization at the cost of our mentality of spirituality. It is very powerful. We should know that since the modern era, we not only have accepted the economic rules from the West, we've also accepted technological and product standards from the West. This is something we should reflect on. We simply voluntarily accept the standards of Western civilization and culture. Economics alone cannot solve the problems in the world or explain the problems in the world. The world we're living in is a standardized and formatized world by the Western civilization. This is not my original proposal. It's a proposal by a Nobel laureate. This current human civilization, if it continues this way, with its material orientation, with this one single industrialization, it will definitely necessarily lead to death. Life itself and all the models of life features diversity instead of a single mono way. Now I'm talking about the contribution of China. We know that China has 4 great major inventions, that is paper making, printing, gunpowder, and compass. I've been thinking about this issue for many years. Like 10 years ago, when people think of this, they feel very proud about our 4 great inventions. But this term, however, was brought up by Western people. They recognize these inventions because these inventions served their purposes. For example, they need some of the techniques for navigation back then.
So they think the gunpowder and the compass are most important because they can go conquering the world by sea, and also of course the printing. But you have to bear in mind that in 5,000 years of Chinese civilization, the papermaking and printing are not the biggest contribution to the world, but the technologies that could spread knowledge and technology behind all of these two skills. But the West is not interested in they are more interested in just the technology. They are not interested in the culture. The culture does not go to the US, go to the old world, along with the so-called four contributions of China. I would like to point out that if we don't consider this four technology as the biggest contribution of Chinese culture, Chinese civilization, we don't use our intelligence in this area, but in a different area, in another four areas. Before we know which are those four areas, I would like to say we have to rediscover China. For China, the spirit is before the material. We are talking about the Tao, which is the way, on the Qi, which is the artifact or the tool. In the West culture, the Qi, the artifact, comes before the Tao, but for us, it's different. So the biggest contribution of Chinese culture should be in the metaphysics, should be in the spirit instead of some artifacts. We should focus more in the area of the spirits, in the metaphysics. For us, this is totally not the primary. That's the West cultural civilization consider the artifacts of China, the technology of the ancient China, make the biggest contribution, which is not wrong, which is not right according to us. So what is the biggest contribution of China? I think, especially for the future, I think the biggest contribution of China is not those so-called the traditional four contributions, the paper printing, the paper making, the printing, etc. I believe the biggest contribution, the major contribution of Chinese civilization is farming based on the law of nature, or some might call it the heavenly way. Second, the Tai Chi wisdom. Third, the Confucian culture. And the fourth, the Chinese medicine. I call this traditional Chinese medicine as the traditional Chinese medicine of the way of life. What is the agriculture based on the law of nature? As we all know that the three factors of the industrial economy production is land, labor, and capital. But in the traditional farming production, not only in China, but also in the whole world, the three factors are just heaven, earth, and people. You need the so-called heaven, or actually it combines the whole nature, including the solar power, including and the second, the earth, the third, the labor, which is people. So that is why in I Ching, the book of change, Confucius wrote about I Ching. It says it is the 5,000 years or to 6,000 years ago, Fu Xi, which is the ancestor of the Chinese people, what he does is just to look up to the sky, look down to the earth, and look at people in between. Why do we have to observe these three? Sky, earth, and people? Because this are the three major factors to the traditional farming. From this perspective, you will see that Chinese traditional way of farming is called the farming based on the law of nature. Second, the Tai Chi wisdom. Tai Chi wisdom comes from the farming activity. If you don't know about the farming, then you don't know what is the Tai Chi wisdom. I believe the Chinese people are one of the most wise people among the world, is one of them, because it has a very graphic and direct way of interpreting the world. Okay, the first diagram is the 24 times solar turns, and based on this, there comes the Taiji, the so-called the Taiji diagram, because as you can understand, the Taiji, it means the origin of the life. It is like the universe form, the form of the universe. And this actually it doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from all the observation through years and years. Based on this Taiji, there comes the two modes, which is the yin and yang diagram. And based on that, there are some more. So the Western civilization based on the materials and the Chinese wisdom comes from the wisdom of observation from the farming activities and the nature. That's why I called the 21st. That's why I say the 21st century. If you want to look for wisdom, you have to go back to the earth. And also, there is also a difference in the Chinese wisdom that it combines the medicine and the food, and also the food with the medicine. So there is Chinese. We have two ancestors. One is the Shen Nong, which is the author of the herbal classics, and the Yellow Emperor, who also has this classic called Yellow Emperors in their canon. When we are talking about the Chinese civilization, we are talking about all of this, all the whole system of the medicine and the Chinese philosophy and the Confucius, also the farming. I'm not talking this out of nowhere, because when back in my hometown, lots of people, when they got sick, they don't have to go to the doctors. They know, they have all the traditional knowledge passed down from one generation to the other, that they know which medicine they should take. And so this is the third contribution is the Confucius culture. The Confucianism. I know that there are lots of audience, among the audience, there are lots of foreigners. They might find it difficult to understand the Confucianism. Well, Confucianism is based on the human nature and also goes through from the governing from home to the state, from mind to matter. In America and in China, they have different way of governing. And the modernization, this kind of modernized governing is more like a disciplinary or a civilians governing, because it's more like the so-called state mechanism, and they call it the democracy. In China, the 5,000 years of governance is using the Confucianism. It is a governance from outside to the inside to tell us to cultivate its inner mind, and also then you can try to bring harmony to your family. Then you can try to govern the state, and on the basis of that, you can reach world peace. This is the kind of governing based on the Confucianism, from the mind to from the private personal mind to the whole universe. So we are talking about the big intelligence and the small government or small governance. I'm talking about that. I'm saying that the smallest governance, the way of governing based on Confucius culture, made the ancient China as the smallest government. Back in the Qing dynasty, there are only 20,000 of officers in the whole Qing emperor, in the whole Qing court. So, and the taxation system has always been 1 out of 10, and it has never changed. And today, putting in nowadays, one province might already have that amount of officers. Today, in a little small county, there would be already have more than like thousands, 10,000s of officers. So what we are doing now is following the way of the West civilization. back in the Confucianism, we need a small amount, a handful of people to do the governing. The fourth contribution is the traditional Chinese medicine. Because of time, I'm not going into details on that aspect. Now, I would like to focus more on the because I have so many things to share, but lots of them need more time. I can use 8 hours to any point of just mentioned before. So now we are only going to focus the 5 characteristics of Chinese intelligent farming. I think before we go into that, we need to clarify something. Agriculture, this concept, this vocabulary is again borrowed from west to China, because when we talk about agriculture, we are considering as a sector, as an industry that is like relative to the secondary industry. But in China, we never had this word. We always calling it farming. The farming. So farming is important, but agriculture is small because it's only just a sector and is a devalued sector. Farming is important. Farming is major. How do we consider in the old times? Well, we consider it as big as the sky. It is as important as sky because food is the primary issue for the people and is an important matter, especially for the governments of an agricultural country. For the ancient Greece, it is not important because for them the commerce, the business is more important than agriculture. So this is we are talking about. This is for the whole for the whole wide world. Agriculture is important. I mean, farming is important. It's about the stability of the region. It's in ancient China, agriculture is called farming. It's not about agriculture. It's as big as the sky, as important as the sky, a major matter of the people's livelihood and the key to governance, the source of the culture. Why the modernized agriculture brings all the damages to the civilization is because it is devalued. So here is a list of, in 2000 years, how we address the issue of farming. And what are those 5 characteristics of the Chinese intelligent farming? First, I think it is low cost farming, low budget, low cost, because Chinese traditional farming observe the nature and make use of the natural way, of the heavenly way. I know this is kind of abstract. Years ago, I was in Kenya. I paid a visit to several countries in Africa. I knew about the food crisis in Africa. I was thinking maybe it's because the land is not good for farming. But when I was in Africa, I realized that Africa is very fertile. The land is very fertile. There are lots of places in Africa has enjoyed better environment than in China's west, in Gansu, in Ningxia, etc. And so, to my surprise, in such a good environment, they don't have enough food. And then I realized in Africa, after the Second World War, although they gained independence, but their agriculture has already been gotten rid of, because only the British, the suzerains tell them how to do the farming. They want them to the suzerains want them to develop the industrial agriculture. In order to do the industrial agriculture, you need capital. But in Africa, obviously, they don't have capital. Then the developed country says, I will offer all the capitals, but you have to produce what I want. For example, the cocoa. And then so now they only do this kind of even from the logic of the economics, or from the point of view that in Africa Africa is not suitable to develop this kind of major scale agriculture. But you know that who is taking control of all the cocoa production? Well, it's the transnational corporations. In Brazil, to produce the cocoa, it can enjoy way less budget, way less cost, and the result of that is the African's agriculture with all the reliance on the capital. In order to solve their own problem of food, the problem of food cannot be solved by dependence on the other people. So when I come back, I wrote to the government saying that what Africa needs is the experience of China. There's no lack of labor in Africa. What they need is some intelligence. I come up with an example that we can, in China, one farmer, I know not farmer of nowadays, because not nowadays the modern farmer doesn't enjoy the same experience as before. If we give, for example, there's one Chinese farmer, one American farmer, you just give them some basic farming tools, for example, some basic farming tools, and then wife, okay, and then also some seeds. If you just leave them in an isolated island, what do you think will happen? After 10 years, if this the Chinese farmer, as long as you give him some basic tools and some seeds, he can totally be self-sufficient. I was a farmer before, so I know, because we know about all the wisdoms about the pest, about the nature, etc. And after 10 years, I know they will have 10 kids, and then they can form a farming unit. But today, from any farmer, any one individual farmer from the West or from the West Europe or the America, they cannot grow some food. So they will end up starving to death, or they will go back to the primitive society. So when I came back from Africa trip, I suggested that Africa, they have lots of labor. The people are very strong. So I make a suggestion that we should introduce all of these experienced peasants from China to Africa, help them, teach them how to do farming. I keep mentioning this on different occasions, but people keep calling me naive. But after a few years ago, well, I'm from Shanxi, and there's a company in Shanxi that went bankruptcy. He was also a farmer, and he also said the same, that how come under such good circumstances, how could they not have enjoy a good life? And because he was in Africa. So after years, he did exactly what I said. He brought in some basic farming tools. He brought in some technologies, and he brought in some seeds, and he did very well in Africa in farming. And the second characteristic is Chinese farming is ecological farming. Our farming is, well, nowadays we don't have enough competence. They need people to tell them. They need the people from the West, from the America. They only believe what the American says. Well, Professor Wen Tiejun has already written a lot on this aspect, and proving that 4,000 years of farming, the Chinese soil doesn't lose its fertility, but American soil, after 100 years of the industrial farming, already facing the problem of the soil degradation. And the third characteristic is a farming related to various kinds of industries, including like handicrafts, etc. Lots of people, they are
I often say to the other scholars who say Chinese cannot do well in industry. My conclusion is that during the 2000 year also crisis period, China not only has the most advanced agriculture in the world, it also has a very advanced handcraft industry. And the result is the Silk Road. It's a product that is more rich in form and in culture or in artistic forms than current industrial products. The Western industry is featured with machine production, while the traditional Chinese way is that of handicrafts. In the 21st century, handicraft that has been replaced by machine industrialization, they are rejuvenating. My hometown is an important force of iron production, the traditional way. Every one farmer back in my hometown can produce iron themselves. But this has all been changed in the new century, in the new era. In my opinion, today's consumption is especially that of the middle class. We not only need organic agriculture, we also need organic industry. Everything we use, all the materials being used are not organic enough. They're also intoxicating. I want our life to be organic, to be without toxicants, to be thrift and no waste. So I believe in this new century, we will also have a revolution of this organic industrialization. And what the solution for this we can find in the rural areas of China, where this industry is being revitalized. Another aspect is the agrarian work of art. China is also a big producer of art products. During Tang Dynasty, we produced more than 2,000 poets whose names have been recorded in history. Now we can no longer find that good number of poets. What they use to describe in their poems are that of agriculture, of rural life. And the last aspect is the connection between agriculture and medicine. Farmers can serve as doctors for themselves. The land, the soil is hospital. Many of the solutions of our current problems lie with the land. Although I praise the robots, the industrialized the labor, still I recognize that it causes a lot of problems. It's alienating. I've cultivated land myself. It is of primary importance. Working farm labor is the most important. It brings longevity. This kind of manual labor, this physical work brings longevity, brings good health. It is the manual work that handles the land, handles agriculture, is most friendly to our health. other than those of the scholar, the industrial worker, or other posts. It is the farm work. People can sing, dance, enjoy life together, so it's good for you. In the 21st century, we should no longer worry about who will be there to cultivate the land. We should have a new concept, a new idea where everyone cultivates the land. Its right to food is one's own right, and one should be able to cultivate our own food. So for the new era, everyone should be entitled to have his or her plot of land and cultivate his or her own food. When you're cultivating your own food, you have your exercising one right, the right to cultural enjoyment. The right is relatively a Western term, but as I've just said, against this current westernized background, the liberty we're enjoying is very limited. Liberty or freedom is not what traditional Chinese culture strive for. The better state that we strive for is something that is at ease with everything, without being able to cultivate your own land by relying on industrial products. At the end of your life, one has to end one's life in the hospital with all kinds of tubes stuck to one's body. I want to go into greater details, and I would like to use an example of an ancient painting, ancient Chinese painting, that is a painting about rural life along a major river in the area of Fuchun. And our president believed that the modern Chinese rural area should be as pretty as that in the painting. We have an ancient important classic called 齐民要术, namely means essential techniques for the welfare of the people, and it's a rich encyclopedia of agriculture. So how to make our rural life beautiful? Here are some examples of poetry that demonstrates how beautiful it used to be. In current rural area, everything is homogenized. Yet in the past, they used to have diversity. Currently, we love our roads to be the bigger, the straighter, the better. In fact, this is quite different from our aesthetics of rural roads. In the past, we want them to be less straight and leads to different scenery posts, like roads that are too industrialized, too straight, too homogenized, will make people feel upset, feel angry, and less at ease, and which is not good for health. Art, including poetry, is a rich legacy of Chinese ancient civilization. The book of poems was a compilation of farmer or peasants' creation. Many young people now no longer read too much Asian poetry, which is a great pity. Last of all, after I've talked about all these contexts or backgrounds, it is easier to answer our question as for where to go for the future. It's logically and naturally that will lead to the following conclusions. First, according to current industry standards, Asian Chinese agriculture should be phased out. This view is still dominating. However, we should not complain about this, but we should use a different perspective. If we want to approach it with a new lens, a lens of ecology, we would see that the traditional characteristics or major features of Chinese traditional agriculture is exactly what they need for today. I do not mean to just simply copy and paste it, but they need to draw from it. Eco-agriculture is not simple. I believe it means to go back to wisdom, to traditional techniques with the help of modernized solar power and that of microbes. Today in China, also in Southeastern and other Asian areas, there is this microbe revolution. Microbes can help us with solving many of the current problems. We believe that if this revolution is successful, we can slowly, steadily phase out chemicals that are causing our problems. The second conclusion is that our interpretation or our view of China's agriculture of wisdom is an issue of importance for the whole world and not just China. We need to view this from a new perspective. Its contribution to the world is not just that from China. We can see in other parts of the world, in the in places where there is long history of agriculture civilization, like in the Americas, in other parts of Asia, in Africa. All their wisdom can also rejuvenate our agriculture industry. China is just taking the initiative. China should take the lead and spearhead in this defense of traditional wisdom against Western industrialized agriculture. This is an important task that requires coordinated efforts from all different kinds of experts and the people. Thirdly, when we talk about China's contribution in this regard, we should not consider Chinese agriculture as a technique. It's rather a problem of culture instead. I believe our contribution, first of all, should come from our confidence, our trust in ourselves. As China is a big civilization, an important agriculture producer, and that once we have confidence in ourselves, we can be more confident in standing up to Western modes. So currently, China as a big civilization, not only are we able to do this, we should also work harder to lead to solidarity among the people around the world. There should be a unitary front in this regard. I don't believe there are too many people are enjoying the fruits of industrial civilization. The number is very limited, 700 million. And yet the whole global population is 7 billion. So the rest, more than 6 billion of population, are not enjoying the fruit of industrialized civilization. We should try to form a solidarity with the world where we can have a win-win result, good coexistence, united construction, and sharing of the public good. Last of all, when we look at our future, we should have new economic models where we should have a renewed understanding of agriculture. It's an industry closely related to life. Therefore, we need life-friendly technology for agriculture. We need something different from the second industry. It should be a revolution for economics. Second, agriculture is a public good. It serves livelihood, and profit is secondary. The marketization of agriculture should be limited. It should be a combination of self-sufficiency and production. And then agriculture is the industry of culture, while industry is second industry is the industry of technology. Agriculture makes us have diversified agriculture and diversified forms of agriculture. Rejuvenating agriculture will bring about a more beautiful, more enjoyable life and livelihood. And then we need a third agriculture revolution navigated by rural rejuvenation and ecological civilization. There should be community agriculture, eco-agriculture, and small yet beautiful agriculture. We should have a new framework for this regard and innovation with our theories. We need not only passion, but also confidence. And then, of course, we need rejuvenation of the rural area. And then we also need a technological revolution. That is what I name as the life-friendly technological revolution. It needs to be based on the ancient wisdom of Chinese traditional medicine. I've talked about this issue of rural rejuvenation and agriculture for many years, and I would like to sum this up like in this way: new energy, micro, rural wisdom, plus the internet. We need new energy, which is needless to say, and then we need micro. Besides this, we should never forget rural grassroots wisdom. We should have small micro machinery that serve us. Also, we should rejuvenate traditional techniques, all kinds of techniques for handicrafts. I believe our future lies there. And the last of all, our modern rural life should be driven by rural grassroots life as an engine. We should not describe rural area as somewhere for profit making. It's somewhere for life, for living. The city life is profitable, but it does not make people happy. It does not make life rich spiritually or culturally. We can achieve this easily at a low cost in the rural area. Each different village has a different way of life. Yet that life in the city is more or less homogenized. On the other hand, we can also make money in the rural area. Each of them is of importance. So we can have, I listed here 10 major industries here. Last of all.
So at last, I would like to say the ecological civilization has to be, it will be the same, it will be what Marxist has said, that we have to start from everybody, from oneself, and the industrial industrial civilization is the revolution of production, and it is inevitably an elite production. Because only a very limited amount of people have the capital. Everybody can live. If you want to live, I would say that when you really start to live, then you will have the power to fight against the capitalism. So the Chinese traditional life is called the five fortune. And then it will be about a life of faith, a life of wisdom, a moral life, a life of cultivation, and a poetic life. And last, I would like to come up with an idea. I'm sorry that I didn't quite keep good record of time. So I believe that we will use wisdom and also plus the digital, especially for young people. This is just an idea because at my age, I can only come up with ideas. So I would like to propose to build an online world public welfare farming university and even a rural civilization institute, because in the era of the digital, we should not let it be privatized, let it be appropriated by the capital. We need to use it to come up with new ideas and new concepts. Let the digital technology work for the third agricultural revolution. So the contribution of China, let the countryside become a place of enlightenment for a new era, and let digitalization realize new connections between humans and the earth, city and the countryside, east and west, north and the south. We need to inspire more volunteers and rely on the power of positive thinking and wisdom. Let's bring together young people, experts, professors, scientists, and even farmers to open up a new time and space and a new civilization in the metaverse of the global village in a world controlled by the capital. That's all. And there are some further readings, including some new books. Thank you, Professor Zhang. I think that what's most important is to give all the audience, including Xiaode and Zoom, a very extensive presentation. Every time I heard Professor Zhang's lecture, I always gain a lot. It also motivates me a lot, inspire me a lot, because he always talks with lots of emotion. And this is also one of the things that I admire Professor Zhang most. So we have two discussants, and first let's invite the first discussant, Jorge Ishizawa. He was born in Peru, graduated from the National University of Engineering in Lima, and obtained his doctorate at the University of Illinois in 1968. He had worked from 1980 to 1992 in the Peruvian public service, principally in the field of rural development planning. In 1993, he joined the PRATEC, which is the Indian Project for Peasant Technologies, and was convinced that the path to autonomy in science and technology lay in the affirmation of cultural diversities. He has since then worked closely with PRATEC, taught at the Ricardo Palma University in Lima, run a master's program for running Indian agriculture and culture, and is the coordinator of PRATEC. Now let's invite Jorge Ishizawa.
Thank you very much. Well, I am very happy to participate here, and I love Professor's presentation. Really, well, the article he shared doesn't reflect really the core of his message, and I really loved his presentation. The thing is, China and the Andean region are centers of agriculture, recognized center universally. And the interesting thing is that, of course, there is diversity in how agriculture is understood. Ours is an agricultural culture, an agricultural country, except that we have suffered from the European invasion by the Spaniards, and that and it was the center in Central America, in Latin America, and South America of the Spanish Empire, and coexisting with Mexico in Central America or North America. And this makes a strong difference because this local agriculture was completely turned over, changed its direction, and changed the type of agriculture that the Spaniards brought and installed in some regions in Peru, which is a different case from China, which has no invasion like that, changed quite a lot. But the livelihood of people, including the Spaniards, depended on this type of population of Peru and all these, including the invaders. The thing, what I said is that, well, I prepare my talk around the paper of Professor ZHANG, but I understand very differently from his very emotive presentation, which I loved, as I said. And I do think that China can take initiative in solving this world problem of hunger and differences and all, based on the agricultural knowledge and wisdom it has. I'm totally sure of that. The thing that I find different from our situation here is that a community is agriculture and is very differently understood, especially because of this Spanish invasion. So this community doesn't speak or doesn't converse very well, doesn't fit into the way of nation state that was installed later by also by the freedom, independence from Spanish rule in 1821 in the 19th century. So it's been a relatively short history for changing all the centuries of colonization by the Spaniards. And that made a very different type of a political arrangement, say. Communities, even now, really are out of the country political system. They are trying to be incorporated, but actually being center of production, of agricultural production, basically. 60% of food comes from the rural area. A different situation that makes it interesting to separate, to conceptualize differently from the Chinese situation, say. Communities are not part of the state. And even I would dare to say that in China, they are differently, with difficulty, part of the global, the national government. I don't know. That would be one of the questions I would like to pose to Professor Zhang. The thing that is left out, understood as industry, which is the modern type of agriculture that we have inherited also here, and we have all our universities are teaching the external agriculture. That doesn't have anything to do, I would say, conceptually and spiritually, as free or alien to the understanding of people, and of course, academics also. So when we started PRATEC, well, I started working in PRATEC in 1994, collaborating before with them. Didn't know anything about it, even though I had been working on agricultural things in Ministry of Agriculture for decades. My life has been connected not with civil engineering as I studied, even in the US, but to agriculture. My parents came from Yamagata, Japan, in the northern part, which is community. So I guess I have in my blood that I did find that when I visited for a day my side in Yamagata, I didn't find my family or the rest of my family because I didn't have much time. But the sacred mountain there, Yamadera, recognized me as part, as a descendant belonging to Mata. And I brought that confidence to here, and understood that this question of agriculture is a very personal and spiritual connection with the world. This is a part that industrial agriculture doesn't take into account. It pretends to be universal. And I have seen that joy that Professor Zhang refers to in doing it is absent in the places I visited in Europe, for instance, where things are mechanized totally and individualized. There is no community. Agriculture, in my way of looking at it based on my experience here, is community. Without community, there cannot be agriculture. So there is a way of taking this into account, and well, I'll stop there, just keeping my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. And also, he has come up with a question to Professor Zhang, and later on we invite Professor Zhang to give an answer after the second discussant. And the second discussant is Dr. Chantana WUNGAEO. She has mixed training background. For example, in sociology and PhD in regional planning, and has worked in the field of political science. She started her academic career as a researcher for 7 years at Social Research Institute and moved on to the Faculty of Political Science to teach politics of development, qualitative research method, democracy, conflict resolutions, and social change, etc. She was part of the founding member of the MA in International Development Studies at Chulalongkorn University. She was also one of the members of the expert committee setting up Peace and Conflict Studies Center at Chulalongkorn in collaboration with the Rotary Foundation. This center has been conducting professional program for peace fellows from around the world since 2000. She retired in 2018 from the Faculty of Political Science. Now, Dr. Chantana is now project director of the Chula Second Century Fund on Creative Tourism Development Project based at the Institute of Asian Studies, and still serve in the team of experts for Rotary Peace and Conflict Studies Center at Chula. Now let's invite Professor Chantana.
Thank you very much. I have to confess that I'm a new learner in agricultural development, but I accept this invitation because I would like to hear Professor Zhang. Very much so. I only started to work to look into sustainable agriculture only beginning of this year, when I started a project on sustainability transition for Thailand, and I looked into two sectors, that is sustainable agriculture and renewable energy. So this is the opportunity that I have, and I have to investigate into the change in the choice of technology in agricultural development in Thailand to be more sustainable, moving from the traditional mainstream agriculture to a more sustainable. And by focusing on the innovations that replace the mainstream agriculture. So I appreciate very much Professor Zhang's presentation. For my research, I haven't heard anyone that put all the ideas together, from the crisis up to the way we think about human and nature relations and that form the ideas of the choice of the development pattern. I think it's very important to see the link of agricultural practices with the metaphysical thinking. I think that so far that I have investigated the Thai studies, I think its idea is very scattered, but Professor ZHANG has put everything together in systemic analysis. I think it's very most valuable contribution. I like to speak about 3 points, not entirely touch on Professor ZHANG's presentation, which is rather comprehensive and very rich. One is on the movement on sustainable agriculture in Thailand. And the second is about rural revitalization, the idea of Professor ZHANG has put forward. And third point is China's role in promoting the ecological agriculture and civilization. I have to say that Thailand doesn't have a long history of ancient agricultural civilization, probably short, and a very small country like Thailand, always a latecomer, look at others and then bring it to own practice. So I couldn't trace back to the grand idea of the ancient agriculture in Thailand. Unlike what happened in civilization of China, no doubt about that. But I follow smallholders, that there is a change in the way agricultural is done in Thailand. For example, you can see that big company now start doing some what do you call it? Range the chicken that's not kept in the captivity. What do you call it? Ranging chicken, something like that, or even organic. Large company now starting to do organic agriculture. But I think the idea of sustainability is not to leave smallholders behind. So my interest is to look at how small people change the way they practice agriculture. But you probably agree with me that developing countries like Thailand has applied, subscribed to the mainstream agriculture after the Green Revolution. There's a new technology like monocrop. The idea of monocrop is really occupied the whole economic development. So small farmer changing, I think it's not about thinking about traditional way of agriculture, but they change because the mainstream practice doesn't answer to their needs. The first idea that I trace back to the movement, I think the sustainable agricultural development has many different factions, movement, the Buddhist movement on this, smallholder movement on this, and then this the king's sufficiency economy, new agricultural model by the king. So many different factions, but I picked the sustainable development network because it covers whole region of Thailand. Now the starting point of this coming from the idea of self-reliance, as the investment in their farm has become very difficult, and a number of them face bankruptcy because of these repeated debts and investments. So the way to get out of that is the idea of self-reliance. They have to pull themselves back out of the market and rearrange their own practice. So the idea of self-reliance leading to a new technology, new technology, farm technology. It's not yet organic, but farm technology in order to, you know, what Professor ZHANG mentioned, that to save cost, to not to invest anymore. And then a large number later on, after a long period of mainstream chemical agriculture, now they begin to see the impact on health. I think the impact on health is the big issues for a small farmer to change to something new that is non-chemical agriculture. You see that they haven't really thought about the idea of how the meaning of agriculture, the philosophy behind the agriculture, but they change their behavior out of the necessity. They need to get out of the crisis. So the organic agriculture, organic has become, you know, accumulating by their own practice, by their own experimentation. So I would say that it's not really the new agriculture in Thailand, in the movement, is not really passing on traditional knowledge, but is the combination, is the convergence between tradition and the modern. So I would say that part of the, if science is the basis of modernity, I think organic agriculture needs science. They need practice, that they need experimentation, test, those kind of things. And then it's growing. I would say that it takes 20 to 30 years for organic to be kind of popularized in Thailand. But it's still thinking in terms of the area, more or less 5% of the area, and certainly this will has a lot of bottlenecks in terms of transition. Whether organic agriculture, if organic agriculture is only one kind of innovation, but people start working on changing their farming method, then they realize that that's not enough, because it will have to link to the market, and then the market has to do with consumer. Then the idea of changing has become more comprehensive, and then leading to a bigger picture of food system in the country, and you draw in more agents, more actors, food producers, also part of the organic farming. There's form a larger movement. But see, this is one of the challenge. The mainstream is still taking as a dominant idea of agricultural development in Thailand. I think even though there are a growing movement for non-chemicals, but there's still struggle to be part of a larger economy. Okay, that's the situation on the ground in Thailand. The idea of agriculture has more functions than food producing, has not yet been much discussed. But I can see that actually agriculture has a function of rehabilitation as much as food, and agriculture is part of livelihood. It's not about selling or food products, but it's about also how people depend on nature, their life, part of the subsistence. together with the market economy. So there are a different type of economic development combined in this kind of agricultural development. Now, whether these things are based in the rural area, the idea of rural revitalization for China, I think, is very particular. At the moment in Thailand, we are going with the trend of urbanization. Urbanization seems to signify a better quality of life. I think we probably have to redefine rural area, not underprivileged area anymore. I can see that in some area, there's a blur area between rural and urban, you know, and you riding on road and you don't know where the urban ends and where the rural area begins. So it's very continuous thing. Now, the new trend in organic farming is that maybe there is something like ruralization of the urban area, meaning that people are thinking of urban farming as part of the many things. I think the idea of urban farming has to do with changing lifestyle. When people are maybe a new middle class that's urging for a new way of life, getting out of the urban lifestyle to connect more to nature. And then the awareness of health issues. I think the health issue is very key idea of sustainability in Thailand, leading to more to safe food. That is, how the food is produced, and then it's leading to the support of organic farming in urban area. And the urban sufficiency is also a question that change the image of urban. But this is only the beginning. I think the new urban farming is only emerging among the younger generation. And I think the idea of rural revitalization is not clear to me. I think in terms of the policy practice rather than the idea. So this could be a good example of how rural area can be replenished in order to serve better the rural community. But we also see a trend, this is very unpredictable, of depopulation of the urban and moving back to the rural area. A new generation, we have a new generation of, I would say, farmers starting to emerge. Maybe out of the economic crisis, the people of new generation do not want to be employed in a corporation, but they want to be kind of a free entrepreneur. And because of the political crisis recently, in the past 10 years, researchers start looking into the people in the rural area, and they found that they are changing. That's why it changed the politics. They are changing, that they become a new entrepreneur, very independent, and not subject to the old way of applying to the big corporation anymore. So there's a new, but I think small, still small, move of a new generation going back to the province, certainly with those who already have farming family there, and then return. But they return with new technologies. Now, how can you cut these people from you call it modernity? But I think a different kind of modernity. So the rural revitalization for Thailand needs to be discussed further. I think we don't have much idea and information to begin with. And China as the contributors into a new civilization, ecological civilization. I think no doubt China is considered as one key of global civilization, considering many artifacts or happen in China, a great country, and no one can imitate China, very specific. The important thing is that I would 100% support if China would take a lead on this. The image of China in Southeast Asia is rather different. The question is that whether China is really repeating the history of the Western influence over this region, another hegemon. I was saying that is when people look at China, it's still very much industrialization, expansion of industries into different regions. Even agriculture, Laos will talk about the big plantation of banana plantation with chemical plantation agriculture. So if China can take a lead in this, that will make a really difference when changing the image of China or Chinese economy overseas. So I think I have covered three key. I think I still think that for Thailand to move forward in terms of a transition, especially in the agricultural area, there's a need to link agricultural practice with a greater value. I think it has to go to a metaphysical thinking. I'm not sure whether one can find that based on Thailand, but I think multi-function agriculture in Thailand has already been discussed. But to get into deeper, it has to elaborate on the relationship of human and nature, and that form a basis of how agriculture would look like. So I think for the first round, I would like to chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. She introduced to us the organic agriculture movement in Thailand, and also the importance of change our way of life, and also the similarities between China and Thailand, because there are some new farmers who come from the urban area and go back to the hometown with technology. And she also come up with some questions that actually quite similar to what Professor Ishizawa has mentioned, that about the state policies, because in China we have the state policies of promoting the ecological agriculture, which is different from the situation in Peru and also the Thailand. In Thailand, in Andean communities, they don't quite well integrated in the state policies. So I think this is the similarities between the two discussants, that they mentioned the relationship between the country and the community. So now let's invite Professor Zhang to give some simple replies, and then we will have some Q&A session. So now let's invite Professor Zhang. Thank you. Thank you to discussants' reply and comments. I believe through this discussion, I also learned something new, which is nowadays in Thailand or in the Andes, the problems facing the rural agricultural development has some similarities to the problems that is facing in China, because now we are all in the same backdrop, which is the industrialization, the rural situations in the industrialization. Well, the difference in China is that it's not because China has done more on this aspect, but I believe today the major situation is in central government. There is such an awareness that the rural area needs to be revitalized, which makes the biggest difference between China and the other countries, including developed and developing countries. In the developed countries, yes, they might have done more in the CSA, but then it is also from the bottom, not from the government. Till today, I think to be able to promote the rural revitalization to such a high extent and to promote with the whole country's power, I believe we cannot see another example in the world. So this is what the audience can recognize. This is a direction of China, of Chinese policies. But when it comes down to the sustainable agriculture, etc., I don't think this is a problem of how to imitate one another. But what I advocate is an awareness. And just like the Professor Chantana and also Professor Ishizawa have mentioned, I believe we should not use the same concept, the same idea of the industrialization. Why we need intelligence? Intelligence is a living culture. It's about diversity. But what kind of consensus we should have, which is it should be on the level of awareness. The community need to be diversified, but on the promotion of agriculture, we should not make the community to cooperation. Just like what is happening in America, the rural area is not like a village, but like a corporation. In order to revitalize our agriculture, this is the criteria we should hold on to. It is what can be decided whether it can be. We can see whether if we are on the right way, whether if the agriculture is on the way to help maintain the community's welfare. It's the main thing. So whether if the policy is good for the community, it should be done to the every different places. So thank you. And this is my comment, my reply. Thank you. Thank you. Because we have limited time, now we have quite many questions from the audience. Now let's invite Professor Xiaode to bring up the questions from the foreign audience.
Okay, thank you. And we collect a lot of questions for 3 speakers. And the first one is for Dr. Ishizawa. Professor Zhang referred to the law of nature as the key philosophy in Chinese agricultural thought. Please tell us more about the Andean philosophy and cosmos vision. It seems there are many commonalities. The second one is for Jorge and Chantana. How do Andean communities and Thai rural communities deal with health issues and the pandemic of COVID-19? Do they still use traditional medicine? One more question for Professor Zhang. Could you say something more about connection between medicine and agriculture? The next one is for Professor Chantana. For Thai organic agriculture, do you have young farmers? Who are the key promoters of organic agriculture? What are the Thai traditional or Buddhist thought that support sustainability in agriculture? And the last one is still for Professor Chantana, do the indigenous communities in Thailand have better practice in sustainable agriculture? Thank you.
好，那这个对3位嘉宾都有问题。
Okay, there are questions for all 3 speakers. So we will invite Professor Zhang first, and then we will invite in the same order. Then it's the Professor Ishizawa, and the last is Professor Chantana. Okay, that question is quite important because 5,000 years of the China's farming activities from the very beginning, I'm talking about 5,000 years ago, has already been connected with the Chinese traditional medicine. I have already said that in China, as the progenitor of the Chinese civilization, which is the Yan Empire, where I live, where my hometown is, where he is from. He cultivated the 5 main crops of China. But those 5 main crops is not only about food, is also correspond to the 5 inner organs of the Chinese traditional medicine, including the heart and the liver, lung, etc. You could say that ancestors of China, when they are deciding what to eat, is not about just to feed, is not just to make you not starve, but they already have a systematic thinking on this aspect. They take into account not just only to feed you, but also about the health and how to cure. So the 5 main crops are 5 staples, but also 5 substance for the health, for the holistic health. So Yan Emperor and Huang Emperor, and also another one, along with another one, Shenlong. Shenlong, he tested hundreds of different herbs to try to find out what can be good for cure certain medicines, cure certain disease. Nowadays, in many different places in China, in rural areas, still have this kind of verbal knowledge. And also the combination of Chinese traditional medicine and also the Chinese farming, the philosophy of how we treat the disease is connected to the same idea of the law of nature of the farming activities. That's why I say a good farmer in China, a good peasant in China is also a philosopher, is also a medical practitioner. Just like what I mentioned before, when I was living in the rural area, lots of the common disease among the community, they were able to treat with just the simple herbs. They don't have to go to the hospital. But now, along with the monoculture, along with the industrialized agriculture, all this basic function of agriculture has lost in the process. But now, recently, especially China Chinese government already started to promote the Chinese medicine, the revival of the Chinese medicine, including the combination of the medicine and the agriculture. In my hometown, the farmers raise the chicken and feed them with the herbs. So now when you enjoy the meat, the chicken, you can also enjoy all the nutritional benefits of that comes from the herbs. Thank you for the question. Thank you, Professor Zhang. Now let's invite Professor Ishizawa. There are questions about the Indian communities, their cosmovisions. So let's invite Jorge.
Thank you. Thank you. The idea or the practice in the Andean communities, we have the more traditional ones. We have visited and were friends with I didn't find the idea of law of nature. What is to be done is born from a conversation with nature in all its manifestations, especially the mountains, who are the female and male, but they take care of recommending what to do. So the consultation is every time there is something to be consulted. That's what we found. So there is a sense of relationship with the deities and the whole of nature in terms of a sense of equality that is understood as nothing and nobody is less. Nothing and nobody is less. Not all we are equal. No, we cannot be equal. We're different. But nothing and no one is less. So under that idea, with respect to the health issues and the pandemic of COVID-19, I was fortunate to participate in the final year of a 3-year project program with 8 NGOs in 5 in Peru and 3 in Bolivia. And what we had the opportunity to explore in the questions of health issues through the pandemic. And of course, there is a lot of knowledge of plants. In the case of COVID-19, it was discovered, or it was felt, that by the symptoms of the disease, that it was cold. So the problem. So you have to keep warm in a sense. So they applied. All communities recur to plants which provided that warmth that was needed to prevent COVID or cure it. That idea of consultation with the deities, the whole of nature, is constant in the communities that still keep that wisdom. So I don't know if that responds the question.
Thank you, Professor. Last of all, we would like to invite Professor Chantana for a response.
Thank you for the questions. Regarding to the health related to COVID-19, rural area is not a specific place, but for the Thai in general, we certainly explore the use of herbal medicine. There's one kind of herbal medicine, I don't know what it's called, but it has the medicinal ingredients called androgapholide, and this is extract from plant, and it's used to help reduce the symptom of COVID, and that is countrywide use. And there are also some scientific research to prove that this help reduce the symptom of COVID-19. So it is not really a particular rural area, but in general. And certainly there's more discoveries out of the COVID-19 even Lingnan seed. Lingnan is a fruits, Lingnan seed extract, and use it to be a nose spray to prevent the contraction of the COVID-19. So certainly we rely on this, but I think for the early symptom. But when considering health issue is not only about the virus, but the COVID-19 is really multiple crises. And the one that the broader definition of health is about living, because of the lockdown created another problem. So the rural area has played a very important role in creating a new idea of exchanging food. So there are people in the north that collect rice for people in the south in exchange of the fish. So this is an unprecedented happening before, so this has been something new from the initiative of people in the rural area. They even send food to the urban centers. The second question is about the key driver of organic agriculture in Thailand. As I said, that the farmers themselves who face the crisis, working with the non-government organization, form a larger network called Sustainable Agricultural Development. And the movement extended to larger concept of food system. So it linked to certain enterprise like shops or hotels that receive food, organic food, or even hospital that receive food from the farmers. So the ideas of social enterprise was applied, and it's growing, and at the same time experimenting. So it's not only one actors, but it's the linkages of the people network. The Buddhist idea, Buddhist thinking, and the organic agriculture, I can't say for the general, but if for a specific group, of Buddhist community called Santi Asok, they have a very unique idea of Buddhist practice. That the idea is moderation, or middle way, a moderation that is not too much, not too little. And then they form organic farming and sell their products. They have agricultural products, produce in many different forms, and sell to the market with very little profit, just to maintain their activities. So the idea is moderation is clear in this group, and the exploitation of nature is also another idea, that whether you will not exploit the nature. I think part of the Thai cosmology that we are under or subsumed under the nature. We are very, very small creature. So people will not conquer nature. So that's why they have to do things with respect to the soil, respect to the forest. So there are some ritual and ceremony with that, but not widely spread, some specific group. The indigenous people, whether they have a better practice, indigenous people is self-subsistent. So only among themselves. The very contested idea of the, what you call it, rotation agriculture. Rotation agriculture is that moving one place to the other, was claimed by modern agriculture that is harmful to nature, harmful to the forest. But then again, another research contested that actually rotation agriculture is really good for ecology because it's not destroy the soil. It is allow the soil to replenish, to revive itself by changing the place. Then again, this is very still controversial and not accepted by the Thai Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry because they think that the indigenous community is growing, and therefore it's changing the condition to maintain at the same scale of farming in the forest. So this is still debating, but I think the idea of rotation is really for ecological balance. But how can they keep that with a changing condition is still something under the debate.
Thank you, dear discussants. Now we're almost drawing to the end. We now have 2 questions from our Chinese audience. Many Chinese young audiences, they may be community workers, engaging other sorts of work. They also propose 2 questions. Both were to Professor Zhang. The first one is that I feel very moved and touched by your passion for the rural area and rural rejuvenation. I would like to ask about your opinion on the current young people's choice of profession or job, and how ordinary young people can hands-on participate in spreading the ideals you were promoting. And second question is how to change the capitalist production and distribution system so that it can go towards sustainable development, and how to gain capital so that it serves sustainable agriculture. How can young people participate? As for the participation for young people, first of all, I believe that current rural reconstruction is a new concept, new space, new life, just like our beginning, like back in Jinggangshan, back many decades ago. Once you've raised this question, I understand that you're being touched, you're being moved, and you want to participate. We want to participate. It is because there is something deep inside and inside outside conditions that incentivizes this, so that you have this kind of epiphany to participate or something. If our young friend who is raising this question, if you've seen that, you think about this for many years, you first of all join them, join all the people of the same cause. And then you will feel that you're not alone. You will hear many stories. You will be in the community, and you may find that all the stories can be takeaways for you. You can have what the questions you raised have already been answered by them. Many of my colleagues have participated in this lofty cause for more than 20 years, and they already have this second generation of participants. If you want to, you can join right now. You're not alone. You have a big community of friends and young people of the same lofty common cause. Why do you go to some place? You go there because it has a future. As a rule, anywhere there is the future, there is something that is different from the mainstream. It's different from the mainstream lifestyle of urban area. It's something new, something different. It may even come into conflict with what we see in the mainstream today. Like concept divides. Some people would consider, young people consider, what about my employment if I go to rural area? In my opinion, it first does not have to do with employment. First of all, it's to live there. As long as you're living there, you are being employed. As time goes, as you engage in work, engage in labor, it will naturally solve your livelihood or income problems. We have countless examples before. I won't go to great details. Second is about how to think of capital in this regard. As I've said, it is a very, very important issue. Back then, Karl Marx was making research into this, as we know. Personally, I think in this new era, we find this new solution to how to handle new approach to capital. First of all, we have this context, this bigger context of China as a socialist country. I think that we will put an emphasis on putting capital in a cage, because the relationship between socialism and the market is a subject and an object. They are not parallel, but currently sometimes market becomes the subject, and they are trying to change this. And then back to what to do in rural area. We need capital, but not this type.
Well, the rural revitalization needs capital, but not the private capital, but instead we need the social capital. So we need a sort. We're going to live with capital for a long time. Not all the capital is bad. Not all the capital is evil. If it is evil, then how can it last for so long? Well, it has problems. In order to solve this problem, this needs thoughts and this needs discussion. So that's why I talk about the new life revolution. The industrial civilization is a revolution on the production, but now the third agricultural revolution is about life. Is a revolution about life. I believe that we will be able to live a low cost, healthy, and to meet not the material needs, but the mental needs and spiritual needs. I believe the life will be like that. And then you will see the capital will collapse. So I believe in the future, we are not talking about a hard revolution. We are talking about a soft revolution. And we are all starting. I believe our ideas and our practice will be able to bring a transformation of the culture of the civilization. And this is for further discussion. Thank you. And thank you to all the three speakers that benefit us all. And since the three speakers are from three different agricultural civilization zone, and they all introduce their respective ideas and also practice. Also talk about the life, the life value, and also the values of life, and also the cosmovision of their respective community. Also, how the agriculture can benefit the future and how can we bring out the change. Well, all of the topics are very extensive, but today we have limited time. So let's do what Professor Zhang has suggested emphasized in the end, that let's build a school, build a digital school to bring out the agricultural revolution, and let us further our discussion online and in a digital way, including to bring out some initiatives about the new kind of practice. And also we would like to give thanks to all the translators, interpreters, including the Spanish English interpreters, Julieta Mendez and Melissa Ruffini, English Chinese interpreters, Huang Xiaomei and Li Menghong, Chinese and Japanese interpreters, Liu Jia and Liu Jiajun.